Some truths don't arrive like thunder. They creep in like a whisper you almost don't hear, and once you do, you can't unhear it. It came on a Tuesday. The mail sat where I'd left it, half-open bills, a credit card offer I'd never apply for, a flyer for a church I'd never attend. Then there it was, out of place, a manila envelope, no return address, no markings except my name, handwritten in block letters that leaned slightly to the left, like they were trying not to collapse. I held it up to the light. Couldn't see through it. I opened it slowly. The letter inside was short. Your father is not dead. He's here. He goes by Jacob John. He works on an auto lot off Highway 14. He lives in a white trailer. He has a new family. A son. A wife. They don't know. Thought you should. I knew him once. Now I don't know what he is. No signature. No explanation. No lie, as far as I could tell. Just impact. I stared at the page so long my vision blurred. The words bled together. Not dead. White trailer. New family. I read it again. And again. Until I couldn't deny what my gut had known the moment I touched the envelope. It was true. I didn't call anyone. Not my mother. Not Henry. Not the handful of friends who'd stopped asking about him years ago. This wasn't news I wanted filtered through another person's pain. I sat on the back porch with the letter curled in my lap and a beer sweating into my jeans. The sun was setting behind the trees, casting long, bloody shadows across the yard. I thought I'd feel anger. But anger is clean. What I felt was heavier. Weight. Like every part of my identity had just been revealed as a scaffolding built around a lie. Not dead. That one phrase unraveled everything. All the grief, the letters I never sent, the brokenness I'd inherited like a curse, it hadn't come from loss. It had come from abandonment. Because the dead don't make choices. The living do. And he chose this. Chose not to look back. Chose not to tell. Chose to give his love, his time, his name, to someone else. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan, watching it spin in silence. My thoughts moved slower. Heavier. Like they were orbiting a gravity I'd never recognized before. In the dark, I imagined him. Smiling at a new son. Tucking him into bed. Calling him by a nickname he once used on me. Making pancakes in a kitchen filled with warmth I'd never received. Laughing. Whole. Living. Living without me. What does that do to a man? What does it make of a son? I packed a bag at 3:12 a.m. threw clothes in without folding. Grabbed the letter. Left everything else. At 4:02, I was on the road. The drive was long and ugly. Highway miles that all looked the same. Gas stations that smelled like dust and old meat. I stopped only to fill the tank and piss. Didn't eat. Didn't speak. Didn't play music. The silence clung to me like heat. I passed signs for towns I didn't know. I imagined his voice reading them aloud. I didn't even know what his voice sounded like anymore. My memories of it were shadows, twisted by time and need. But I imagined it anyway. I wanted him to know I was coming. I wanted him to feel it. I hit the edge of Arkansas just after noon. The land changed. Grew flatter. Quieter. Like the state itself was holding its breath. My eyes burned from lack of sleep. My hands ached from gripping the wheel too tightly. My mouth was dry. But I kept going. The directions in the letter were too specific to be a joke. And there it was. A rusted sign. All County Auto, honest deals. Honest people. The kind of place where old trucks go to die or get reborn, depending on who's doing the work. I parked across the street. Rolled the windows down. Waited. I didn't need to wait long. He stepped out of the office carrying a clipboard. Talking to a man in a flannel shirt. Laughing. He looked normal. Like a guy who had a lawn he complained about and kids he bragged on. His hair was thinner, peppered gray. His shoulders broader than I remembered. He walked with the ease of a man who didn't know what it meant to be hunted by his past. And that's when it hit me hardest. He wasn't haunted. I was. I had spent my whole life dragging his ghost behind me like a body I couldn't bury. And here he was, breathing. Free. I stayed there until he went inside. Then I drove to a cheap motel on the edge of town. Paid cash. Didn't unpack. Just sat on the edge of the bed staring at the wall. There was no plan. No script. Just the undeniable pull of gravity. I would go back tomorrow. I would look him in the face. And I would ask, How? How did you erase me so cleanly? How did you start over like I never existed? And maybe why? But I already knew. Because you don't leave unless you want to. And you don't stay gone unless you never meant to return. I thought the hardest part was losing him. Turns out, it's knowing he gave himself away to someone else, and left me with nothing but questions. You wait your whole life for a ghost to speak, and when it finally does, it isn't a scream. It's a whisper that rewrites everything. Every town has a place it doesn't talk about. And every man who runs carries the weight of the place he hides in. The trailer sat at the far end of a dirt road that didn't show up on any map. No mailbox. No number. Just tire tracks and a gate made of bent chain link held shut with a rope. I drove past it the first time. Circled back. Parked half a mile away. Walked the rest. The sun was high. Air heavy. Insects humming like some ancient engine. My boots kicked up red dust with every step. I could taste the silence before I even saw the place. The trailer was white, like the letter had said, but not clean. Mold crept up the siding. A wind chime made from broken keys hung from the awning. There were toys in the yard. A tricycle tipped over. A plastic bat near the porch. He had a son. That thought hit me harder than anything else. He had another chance. And he took it. With someone else. I stood at the edge of the yard for 10 full minutes before I moved. The curtains were closed. I didn't see movement. But there was a car in the drive. A small hatchback. Clean. I stepped forward. My heart wasn't racing. It was thudding. Like a slow, deliberate fist against my ribs. I could have turned around. I could have written a letter. I could have left this confrontation in my head, where it could be anything. But I kept walking. 3 steps onto the porch. Raised my hand. Knocked. The door opened. Not him. A woman. Blonde. Maybe 38. Tank top. Eyes that looked like they were still learning how to harden. Can I help you? I tried to speak. My throat locked. I'm looking for Jacob. Jacob John. She stared at me. Something shifted. He's not home. Pause. Who are you? I opened my mouth. Closed it. Then, I'm his son. Her eyes flickered. She didn't gasp. Didn't cry. Just adjusted. Like a chair tilting forward when the weight shifts. She opened the door wider. You better come in. The inside smelled like cinnamon and dust. A kid's drawings were stuck to the fridge. One said Daddy, in big crayon letters beneath a stick figure with a cape. She poured 2 glasses of water. What's your name? Eli. He never told me about you. That makes 2 of us. She almost smiled. Almost. He's at the lot. Won't be back till 6. Does he know you know? She shook her head. No. But I know him. I know what ghosts look like when they wear skin. We sat in silence. Ice clinked in our glasses. Then she said it. You're not the only one who's come by. I blinked. What? There was another man. Couple years ago. Said he used to know Jacob. Asked a lot of questions. Left angry. Did Jacob tell you anything? No. Just said he used to be someone else. Said he lost that man in the war. What war? She laughed. But it was dry. Exactly. I looked at the fridge again. The drawing. What's his name? Your son. Caleb. He's 6. He think Jacob's a good dad? She nodded slowly. Yeah. He is. At least here. With us. He wasn't with me. She didn't flinch. That's why you came, right? To tell him? To make him see it? I don't know. Maybe. She stood up. He'll be home soon. You want to wait, you can. Or I can tell him you stopped by. I stood too. No. I need to look him in the eye. She opened the door. Then be ready. Because he might look back and not recognize you. And worse? He might not care. I walked back to the car as the sun began to drop. Everything felt fragile. Like truth was a window, and I was holding a stone. Some fathers build new homes. Others board up the old ones and pretend they never lived there. And some leave a trail of sons with their names half erased. It's one thing to lose a father. It's another to meet the version of him that never had to survive you. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I lay in bed with my eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling like it could spell out the answer to the one thing I couldn't ask aloud. What if he loves that boy more than he ever could have loved me? Morning came slow. Too bright. I left the motel at dawn, drove back to the lot, parked 2 spaces over from where I had the day before. I watched the door. He came in at 7:58 a.m. sharp. Predictable. Routine. That pissed me off more than I expected. Because it meant he had a rhythm. A life. Order. I waited until lunch. Watched him laugh with a coworker, wave off a customer, pick up a sandwich from the convenience store across the street. Watched the way he talked with his hands. The way he leaned back when he laughed. The way he walked like the ground had never betrayed him. At 1:12 p.m., I got out of the car. Walked across the lot. He saw me from 20 feet away. Didn't recognize me. Can I help you find something? He asked. His voice. I hadn't heard it in over 20 years. It was casual. Friendly. Empty. Like I wasn't a scar walking toward him. I'm not here for a car, I said. He tilted his head. Squinted. I watched the moment it hit him. He didn't gasp. Didn't speak. Just froze. Like someone had pulled the plug on a movie he'd been starring in for years. Eli, he said finally. Like my name hurt to say. I nodded. I got your letter, I said. Or whatever version of it that found its way to me. He swallowed. Looked down. Come inside, he said. The office was small. Window AC unit humming. Desk covered in paperwork. A framed photo of him and the woman from the trailer. The kid. All of them smiling. I didn't think. No. I cut him off. You didn't. He sat. I didn't. I have questions. He nodded. I figured. I took out the photo. The one from the attic. Tossed it on the desk. He stared at it. His eyes didn't soften. You were so little, he said. You were still a father. He sighed. I was 29. I was angry. I was wrong for it. But I didn't think I could fix it. And then your mom left. Took you? I thought it was for the best. I leaned forward. No, you didn't. You didn't think. You erased us. You started over. He didn't argue. He just looked tired. Like the weight of the version of him he'd built was finally too much to hold. She doesn't know, I said. He nodded. Caleb. He doesn't either. No. And you weren't ever going to tell him, were you? His silence was the answer. Do you love him? I asked. He looked up, startled. Of course. Then you get it. What you took from me. What you gave to him. He didn't reply. I don't want money. I don't want apologies. I want you to see me. The version of your life that got abandoned so you could find peace somewhere else. He nodded slowly. I see you. No, you don't, I whispered. And then I left. Because sometimes walking out is the only thing you can do when you've been walked away from. A man can raise 2 sons and only love one. The tragedy is, both sons will wonder if it was their fault. Families don't always lie to protect you. Sometimes they lie because the truth is a ruin they don't want to live inside anymore. After I left the lot, I didn't go far. Just far enough to breathe. I pulled into the lot behind a faded diner that looked like it had survived the 80s and given up after. I sat in the booth farthest from the window, ordered coffee I wouldn't drink, and stared at the walls until they stopped moving. My hands shook. Not with rage. Not anymore. With weight. All of it. The lies. The years. The child's drawing on the fridge. The name that felt foreign in his mouth. Eli. Like it was a name he once read in a novel. I wasn't sure what I had expected. An apology? A breakdown? Regret that would seep into the cracks he'd left in me? But he didn't fall apart. I did. Back at the motel, I sat in the tub with the water running cold around my legs. Fully dressed. Phone in hand. I scrolled through my contacts. Passed my mother's name 3 times before I tapped it. 3 rings. Then, Eli. Hey. You sound tired. I found him. Silence. Like she'd already known. And? He has a son. A wife. A fridge covered in drawings. Did you talk to him? Yeah. And? He looked at me like I was a chapter he didn't remember writing. She sighed. Deep. Old. He was always good at forgetting. I asked what I'd never asked before. Did you ever love him? No. Did he ever love me? The pause was too long. He loved what you represented. Which was? Redemption. Later that night, I drove back toward the trailer. Not to confront him again. I didn't want more words. I wanted to see. The lights were on. Inside, shadows moved past windows. Laughter muffled. Caleb's voice. A cartoon on the television. And then I saw something that shattered me more than his absence ever could have. Him, kneeling on the floor, arms open, catching his son mid-run. Holding him. Not like a man making up for something, but like a man who had never lost anything at all. I drove back to the motel and drank until the bottle was empty. Poured another glass and drank that too. I stared at the ceiling, then the wall, then the photo still folded in my wallet. He had thrown me away and started over. He didn't just erase me. He replaced me. The next morning, I left Arkansas. Didn't say goodbye. Didn't leave a note. I drove north. No destination. Just a direction. 2 days later, I called Uncle Henry. Told him everything. He didn't sound surprised. That man's always been good at making homes he don't deserve. He looked happy, Henry. Of course he did. Shame don't stain the same way on some men. Back home, I unpacked in silence. The house was smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I was just heavier now. I went to the kitchen. Opened a drawer. Pulled out a photo I'd taped under the cutlery tray. The old one. River. My face beaming up at a man not looking at the camera. I held it for the last time. Then I tore it. Once. Then again. Then again. Until it was confetti. Then I flushed it. Watched the pieces swirl and disappear. Some names don't belong in stories. Some are better left in silence, so the people who speak them don't keep bleeding. There are truths a woman learns to live with because if she doesn't, she can't raise a son in the ruins. I called her again, 2 days after I got back. She didn't say hello. Just breathed into the phone like she was already waiting. I need to talk to you. A pause. Then talk. Not over the phone. Another breath. This one heavier. I'll make coffee. Her kitchen smelled the same. Some mix of lemon cleaner, old wood, and whatever she was using to keep herself from falling apart. She poured 2 cups, black. I didn't touch mine. I pulled the chair back like I used to when I was a boy, loud, scraping, intentional. Sat down and looked her in the face. Did you know he was alive? She didn't blink. Yes. How long? Years. Why didn't you tell me? She stirred her coffee with a spoon that didn't need to be there. Because what good would it have done? He started another family, I said. I figured. He has a son. A boy named Caleb. She finally looked up. And there it was. Not surprise. Not pain. Relief. Good, she said. Good? That he's someone else's problem now. The words hit like glass in my mouth. He seemed like a good father. She nodded. He always had that in him. Just not for you. Why? She took a long sip of coffee. Set the cup down with both hands. Because you were real. And he couldn't handle real. I felt something rise in my throat. Not rage. Grief. For a version of her that maybe wanted to tell me sooner. For the boy I was who waited by the window with a backpack, hoping the knock would come. For the man I became trying to be the opposite of someone I couldn't name out loud. Did he hit you? I asked. No. But he hurt you. Every day. How? She looked out the window. By leaving, even while he was still here. We sat in silence. Not the cold kind. The tired kind. Why didn't you tell me? I asked again, softer this time. She smiled, but it didn't reach anything in her. Because I needed you to survive. And I was afraid if you knew, you'd go looking. And if you looked, you'd find him. And if you found him, maybe you'd turn into him. I still might. No. You won't. How do you know? Because you came back. Before I left, I hugged her. Not out of affection. Out of understanding. And maybe forgiveness. She didn't say goodbye. Just, tell me when it's over. And I didn't ask her what she meant. Because I already knew. There are things a mother carries in silence so her son can carry himself. Some men grow into their fathers. Some grow away from them. And some reach a point where either direction fits anymore. I didn't go back to work. Didn't answer texts. Emails. I let the world spin without me, and it didn't seem to notice I was gone. That's what grief does when it starts to rot, it isolates, but quietly, like fog settling over a familiar field. I spent my days walking. Nowhere in particular. I ended up at parks with empty benches, corners of neighborhoods I hadn't seen since I was a kid, dead ends that felt poetic. Every street felt like a version of my life that could have been if he had stayed. And every one of them led to the same place, nowhere. I passed a father and son in the grocery store one afternoon. The boy couldn't have been older than 10. Was trying to sneak candy into the cart. The father caught him, grinned, tossed it in anyway. It wrecked me. Not the candy. Not the moment. The way they belonged to each other. The ease. The routine of it. I stood in the cereal aisle and cried. Didn't care who saw. Because that's what it means to lose something you never had. It hits when you least expect it, and it doesn't care if you're ready. I went home that night and took every box, every folder, every photograph I had of him, of us, and laid them out across the floor. I stared at them until the room blurred. I wasn't angry anymore. I was emptied. I realized I had never truly been a son. I had been a placeholder. A symbol. Something he touched briefly before running. And now that I had met the version of him who stayed, the version who fathered a boy and smiled while doing it, I knew. Whatever I had been wasn't enough for him. But it had to be enough for me. So I made peace the only way I could. I stopped calling him my father. I stopped thinking of myself as his son. I stopped needing it. That's not to say it stopped hurting. Only that I let go of the fantasy that there was anything left to save. Uncle Henry called a week later. You all right? No, I said. But I'm getting there. That's something. It is. I spent the next few days rebuilding things. Not physical things. Me things. I started reading again. Cooking again. Called an old friend just to hear a voice that didn't carry weight. It wasn't healing. But it was human. And after carrying a ghost that long, that was enough. You don't stop being a son because your father disappears. You stop being a son when you realize he was never coming back, and it no longer changes how you live. Some fathers teach their sons how to fish. Mine taught me how to disappear. I always wondered if he planned it, or if leaving was just something that came natural to him, like a second skin he could slip into when the weight of life got too heavy. After everything, that's what stuck with me most. Not the lies. Not the silence. But how easy it seemed for him to walk away. It made me wonder if I had inherited that too. I caught myself doing it in little ways. Ignoring calls. Canceling plans. Leaving conversations half-finished because the thought of being seen too clearly made my chest tighten. I disappeared into routine. Into dishes and laundry and emails I reread instead of replying to. Into music loud enough to drown out the voice that still sounded like him when I was angry. Sometimes I'd be in the middle of a conversation and just go silent, not because I had nothing to say, but because the act of staying present felt like carrying something too fragile. I didn't know how to stay. And I hated how familiar that felt. A friend asked me once why I ghosted for weeks at a time. I told them I was just busy. They didn't buy it. Neither did I. He taught me how to pack light. How to keep a secret. How to build a story that sounds just enough like the truth to get you out the door. He didn't sit me down and say it. He showed me. Over and over. In the pauses. In the absences. In the way his name became an echo I stopped expecting to answer. But I didn't want to be him. I didn't want to be the man someone else talks about years from now and says, "He never called back." I didn't want to pass this silence down like a damn heirloom. So I started trying to stay. Small things. Answered messages. Returned calls. Sat through awkward silences instead of escaping them. It felt like learning a new language. And some days it still does. I thought about writing him a letter. Not for him. For me. Something simple. You taught me how to leave. I'm trying to teach myself how to stay. But I never send it. Because he'd already taught me the last lesson too. Some people leave so clean, they don't even leave a place for forgiveness to land. I carry the door he walked out of in my chest. But I'm learning not to walk through it just because it's open. The truth doesn't always live where we expect. Sometimes it's buried in the places we stopped looking, because we were too scared of what we might find. It started with a phone call I almost didn't take. One of those numbers that look like a scam. But something about it made me pick up. "Is this Eli Mercer?" The voice was tight. Male. Professional, but not cold. "Yes. This is Officer Randall McGinnis with the Pulaski County Sheriff's Department. You listed yourself as a potential contact through a prior inquiry. We had something come across our desk. Name matched." My chest seized. He kept talking. "We came across an archived file during a digital migration. One that hadn't been filed correctly. Jacob Mercer. It references a domestic incident from 1993. No arrest. No charges. But the report was vivid." "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means your father may not have just left. He may have run." The report arrived 2 days later. Scanned pages, wrinkled from age and bad photocopying. I opened the file like it might bite me. It did. Words jumped out first. Altercation. Endangerment. Minor present. The minor was me. I kept reading. Apparently, my father got into a fight with someone. The name was redacted. Witnesses described shouting, breaking glass, something about a threat made with a tire iron. The report said officers arrived to find him already gone. He'd vanished before they even stepped onto the porch. I stared at that word for a long time. Vanished. It made everything feel heavier. Worse. Like my story was never about absence, it was about escape. He hadn't just walked out. He ran from something. From someone. And maybe, from himself. I printed the report. Sat at the kitchen table with it. Called my mother. She answered on the second ring. "I need you to tell me what happened that night." She went quiet. Then, "I hoped you'd never find that." Well, I did. Silence again. Then, like a crack in old wood, he grabbed me. He'd never done it before. You were screaming. I grabbed you. Locked us in the bathroom until he left. Why didn't you ever tell me? Because the version you made up, the one who just left, it hurt less than the one who might have stayed. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I sat there, still as stone, holding the printed pages like scripture. He didn't disappear. He fled. And for 29 years I blamed myself for not being enough to stay for. But it was never about me. He wasn't running from me. He was running from the truth. From his damage. From the fire inside him. He didn't disappear like a ghost. He ran like a man afraid of the wreckage he'd already started. And I spent my whole life worshipping his absence like it was mystery, when it was just cowardice wearing silence like armor. Some men leave money, heirlooms, property. Mine left a ghost. A blueprint of how to vanish without being gone. A silence that knows my name. The box was smaller than I expected. Rough pine, weathered at the corners. No lock. No engraving. It looked like the kind of thing you'd find in a junk shop for $5, sitting between forgotten ashtrays and rusted tools. But it was heavier than it looked, and I knew the moment I opened it that it was the last thing I'd ever receive from my father. Technically, it wasn't from him. It came from a woman named Diana, his neighbor. She'd found it when cleaning out his workshop. Apparently, she thought I'd want it. It had your name inside. Her note read. Figured that meant something. I sat in my motel room for over an hour before touching it. The light overhead buzzed like a dying insect. The air smelled faintly of stale cigarettes and chlorine. Everything felt thin, like the edges of the world had worn down to paper. Eventually, I opened the box. Inside, a switchblade. Rust at the joint. The initials JM etched into the handle. A roll of duct tape. Half used. A photograph, me, maybe 5 years old, asleep in a lawn chair, sunburned cheeks and popsicle in hand. A coin. 1982 Liberty dollar. A folded piece of paper with one sentence, handwritten. I didn't know how to love without hurting you. That was it. No signature. No apology. No closure. Just that one line. It looked like it had been written in haste, then read over 100 times. My breath caught in my throat like I'd swallowed gravel. I sat back in the motel chair and stared at the blade for a long time. There was something sick about it, leaving behind a weapon as a keepsake. Like he was handing me his curse in case I wanted to carry it forward. I picked up the photo. I don't remember the moment it captured. But I remember the chair. The popsicle. The smell of the lake that day, how it made my stomach roll with joy and dread at once. What I couldn't remember, not at all, was him. Where was he in this picture? Behind the camera? Or had someone else taken it, and he'd just been standing there, hollow-eyed, half-drunk, planning his exit? I folded the note again. Slowly. Precisely. Like maybe if I closed it just right, it would undo something. But the sentence lingered. I didn't know how to love without hurting you. What kind of love does that become? What kind of inheritance is that? Later that night, I went for a drive. Arkansas highway, flat and open, headlights sweeping across the dark like I was trying to cut the night open. I pulled off at a rest stop. No one around. Just the hum of insects and the hiss of wind through the trees. I pulled the box out of the passenger seat. Carried it to the edge of the woods. Opened it one more time. I thought about burying it. Thought about tossing it in a ditch or setting it on fire. But I couldn't. Because despite everything, despite the years, the silence, the absence, this was it. This was the only thing he ever gave me. A box full of fragments. A blade and a photograph. A taped-up memory of violence and sweetness. A sentence that sounded like truth, but maybe was just another escape route. I sat down beside it, right there in the dirt, and cried for the second time in 10 years. Not because I missed him, but because I finally realized. He was never coming back, not because he couldn't, but because he never intended to. When I got back to the motel, I wrapped the items individually in plastic bags and placed them back in the box. I labeled it him. Then I pushed it to the back of the closet. Out of sight. But never out of blood. Some legacies are built from names carved in wood or metals in drawers. Mine came in a box. Small, sharp, unfinished. The only thing he left behind was a version of myself I refused to become. Some men steal years. Others steal names. But the worst theft is invisible, taking love before it's even been offered, and leaving guilt in its place. I hadn't spoken to anyone in 3 days. No calls, no messages, not even a passing hello. I stayed inside the motel room like it was a bunker, lights off, curtains drawn, the only sound the dull hum of the refrigerator trying not to die. There was food, mostly gas station sandwiches and warm cola, but I barely touched it. The box sat on the table. Still closed. Still labeled him. I kept expecting it to whisper. Or rot. Or vanish the way he had. But it didn't. It just sat there. Waiting. Like a weight that didn't press down, but pressed in. I took a long shower that morning. First one in days. Let the heat scald me until my skin turned red and my thoughts softened just enough to float. And then I sat. At the edge of the tub. Water dripping down my face, mixing with tears I didn't realize were falling. I said it out loud. Dad. Just once. It felt like swallowing nails. I dressed in silence. Drove without music. The sun was harsh, and the roads out here looked like they'd never been paved for people, just for trucks, or ghosts, or men trying to get away from themselves. I didn't know where I was going until I was already halfway there. Back to the farm. Back to him. Diana answered the door again. Same faded jeans, same tired eyes. You all right? She asked. No. She nodded. Didn't press. Led me out back without a word. Around the side of the barn, past rusted tractors and oil drums that hadn't moved in years. And then we were there. A simple stone. No last name. Just Jacob. 1957 to 2024. No more running. I stared at it for a long time. No more running. As if that were a comfort. As if dying was the only thing that ever made him stop. I wanted to scream at him. I said, not sure if I was talking to her or the dirt. But I didn't. She said nothing. I wanted him to apologize. He wouldn't have, she said. I know. I knelt. Pressed my hand to the soil. It wasn't warm. It wasn't cold. It was just there. I thought if I ever found him, it'd fix something. Even if it hurt. I looked at her. But it didn't fix a goddamn thing. She nodded. Grief doesn't come with repairs. Just wait. We stood in silence for a while. Then she walked away. Left me there, alone with the grave of a man who built my silence before I even had words. I sat down beside the headstone. Pulled the note from my back pocket, the one I'd found in the box. I didn't know how to love without hurting you. I set it on the stone. Then lit a match. Watched it curl and blacken. Smoke rose like something leaving me. But not him. He was already gone. I stayed there until sunset. Spoke things I never meant to say. Things like, I hated you. And, I waited for you every year. And, I made excuses for you, called it depression, war trauma, whatever I could think of. But you were just a man who didn't want the weight of fatherhood. And finally, what you took from me, I never had to give. He took my innocence before I understood what it was. Took my confidence. My mother's laughter. He took birthdays and names and the safety of a child's sleep. But most of all, he took choice. The choice to love him, or to walk away. He made that choice for me the day he left. And he made it again every year he stayed gone. The next day, I drove home. Back to my city. My apartment. My job that waited like nothing had changed. I unpacked. Threw out the box. Kept the photograph. Not for him. But for me. Proof that I was there. Proof that I survived him. A week later, I got a call from my mother. I heard, she said. Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm not. That night, I wrote something in my journal. Not for a therapist. Not for closure. Just for the boy I used to be. He was a hole I tried to fill with questions. But some men aren't answers. They're warnings.